He called her just the black maid. He said it with a laugh. A careless laugh. The kind of laugh some men carry for years without ever knowing how heavy it sounds to someone else. In the glass conference room high above the city, Daniel Whitmore leaned back in his chair and laughed loudly at something his colleague Mark Ellison had just said. Daniel was 62. Silver hair brushed neatly back. A tailored charcoal suit. A blue tie that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Mark Ellison, 58, sharp jawline and polished smile, leaned toward him with the easy confidence of a man who had spent decades at the top. Across the table sat Claire Huang, 45, elegant in a green blazer, observant and composed. And standing quietly beside them was Naomi Brooks. 50 years old. Dark skin glowing softly under the office lights. Hair pulled back into a simple bun. A gray uniform apron tied neatly at her waist. She held 2 stainless steel coffee carafes in steady hands. The large screen on the wall displayed market charts and financial graphs. Red and green bars climbing and falling. Daniel's billion-dollar tech firm was facing a problem. A serious one. Their new trading software had begun to fail in small, unpredictable ways. Millions were at stake. The tension had been building for weeks. Yet in that moment, Daniel was laughing. Naomi stepped forward to pour coffee. Her movements were calm. Measured. Graceful. Daniel glanced at her and said lightly, "Just leave it there. We will handle the code." He did not look at her when he said it. But Mark chuckled. And Daniel added with a grin, "After all, she is just the black maid." The words hung in the air. Claire's smile faded slightly. Naomi did not react. Not on the outside. She finished pouring. Placed the cups carefully. And stepped back. If you have ever reached 50 or 60, you know that some words do not cut loudly. They settle quietly. Like dust. And over the years, that dust can grow heavy. Naomi had worked in the building for 9 years. She knew the rhythm of its elevators. The echo of late-night footsteps. The smell of fresh carpet and expensive cologne. She had seen young interns grow into executives. She had heard arguments through half-closed doors. She had also seen fear. The kind of fear powerful men rarely show in public. Daniel's laughter faded as he turned back to the screen. The graphs were not behaving. Numbers were drifting off pattern. The algorithm that was supposed to predict market swings was missing something. Something subtle. Mark rubbed his temple. "We have the best engineers in the country. How can we not find the flaw?" Claire spoke softly. "Maybe we are looking at it the wrong way." Daniel waved a hand. "No. The math is solid. We built it ourselves." Naomi quietly wheeled the empty cart toward the door. But before leaving, she paused. Her eyes rested on the screen. Just for a moment. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm. "Excuse me, sir." The room fell still. Daniel looked slightly annoyed. "Yes." She nodded toward the chart. "The pattern breaks every third cycle. Not randomly. It shifts after the overseas data feed updates." Mark frowned. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And how would you know that?" Naomi met his gaze. "Because I have been watching it every night when I clean this room. For 3 weeks. You replay the data. Over and over. The break is not in the math. It is in the timing." Silence filled the space. Claire slowly turned in her chair. Daniel's smile disappeared. Mark leaned forward. "Explain." Naomi stepped closer to the screen. She did not rush. She did not tremble. "When I was younger, I studied computer science. Back in the late 80s. Before I left school to care for my mother." She looked at the charts. "You are running the domestic feed and the international feed on slightly different update clocks. The system assumes they sync perfectly. But they do not. So every third cycle, the lag creates a false signal." Daniel stared at her. The city skyline reflected faintly in the window behind him. You are saying our billion-dollar system is tripping over a clock delay? Yes, sir. Mark quickly opened his laptop. Claire stood up and moved closer to the display. They tested it. Adjusted the timing. Ran the model again. The red bars stabilized. The green bars smoothed. The false spikes vanished. No one spoke for several seconds. Daniel slowly leaned back in his chair. But this time he was not laughing. He looked at Naomi as if seeing her for the first time. You studied computer science. She nodded. Life had other plans. For many listeners in their 50s and 60s, that sentence carries weight. Life had other plans. Children. Sick parents. Economic downturns. Dreams paused. Dreams delayed. But knowledge does not disappear. It waits. Daniel cleared his throat. Why did you never tell anyone? Naomi smiled gently. No one ever asked. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just truth. Mark closed his laptop. Daniel stood up slowly. Walked toward Naomi. The room felt different now. Smaller. More honest. He extended his hand. Naomi Brooks. I owe you an apology. She looked at his hand. Then at his face. I did not mean to disrespect you. He said quietly. The words were not polished. Not rehearsed. They were real. And sometimes in life, that is what matters most. Naomi shook his hand. Apology accepted. Claire smiled warmly. Daniel turned to Mark. Offer her a consultant contract. Immediately. Mark nodded. And Naomi felt something shift inside her chest. Not pride. Not revenge. But recognition. Later that evening, when the office lights dimmed and most employees had gone home, Daniel remained in the conference room alone. The city outside glowed with evening lights. He remembered his own father. A factory worker who never finished high school. A man who once told him, "Son, never measure a person by the clothes they wear. Measure them by the quiet strength they carry." Daniel had forgotten that. Somewhere along the road to success, he had mistaken title for wisdom, money for intelligence, position for value. He looked at the empty coffee cups on the table and felt humbled. The next morning, the staff gathered again. But this time Naomi sat at the table. Not beside the door. She wore a simple navy blouse. Her hair still neatly tied back. Daniel introduced her. This is Naomi Brooks, our new systems timing consultant. There were murmurs. Surprise. Curiosity. But also respect. Because competence commands respect. Naomi spoke clearly, explaining the synchronization issue. Her voice steady. Her explanation logical. Nothing dramatic. Just knowledge shared with confidence. And in that moment, many in the room learned something larger than code. They learned that wisdom does not always sit at the head of the table. Sometimes it stands quietly near the door, waiting. Over the following months, the company stabilized. Profits returned. The software improved. Daniel changed in small but noticeable ways. He listened more. Interrupted less. He began asking the cleaning staff their names. Not out of guilt, but out of understanding. One afternoon he said to Naomi, "You know, when I was young, I believed success was about climbing higher than everyone else. Now I think it is about seeing everyone clearly." Naomi smiled. It takes time to learn that. For those listening tonight, perhaps you too have known what it feels like to be overlooked. Or perhaps you have been the one who overlooked someone. Life gives us both roles. If we are fortunate, it also gives us chances to grow. The story of that conference room spread quietly through the company. Not as gossip, but as a lesson. People began to speak up more, to share ideas without fear. And productivity rose. Because when people feel seen, they give their best. One evening, as Naomi prepared to leave, Daniel walked beside her to the elevator. "Thank you," he said. "Not just for the code, but for reminding me of who I used to be." She looked at him gently. Sometimes we just need someone to hold up a mirror. The elevator doors closed softly, and Daniel stood there for a moment, reflecting. In our later years, we often look back and measure our lives, not by how much we earned, but by how we treated others, by the respect we offered, by the humility we learned. Naomi never sought revenge. She did not raise her voice. She simply spoke when the moment came. And that calm courage changed a room, changed a company, perhaps even changed a man. He once called her just the black maid. But she was never just anything. She was knowledge, patience, grace, and quiet strength. The kind of strength many of you listening have carried through decades of living. Through raising children. Through caring for loved ones. Through adapting to a changing world. Your voice matters. Even if it has been silent for years. And sometimes, when you finally speak, you may correct more than a line of code. You may correct a heart. Thank you for spending these moments with the Black Voices. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own journey, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your voice keeps this community alive. And here at the Black Voices, every voice is valued.